Hello friends and welcome back. Well, it's morning coffee time and I thought what a delight it would be to sit here amongst the mess, not ideal, and have a little catch up with you while I enjoy my morning coffee. So first of all, I shall explain. I decided after 5 years of debating whether I should or shouldn't to paint a wall. It's a brick wall, like a feature wall. And it has always been raw, and I love the brick, and the color is good, but I'm also a big fan of white brick. Painted brick white. I just love it, always have. Whether it's internal or external, I don't care. So I decided to take the plunge, and it's going to be quite a job because the brick is, it's not what you'd call flat. It's quite a unique style of brick. It's all very, in a sense, rustic, rough and rustic. So I think it'll look wonderful painted, but that means I'm going to have to paint it by hand. I won't be able to do it with a roller. Wish me luck. Probably 2 coats of undercoat for a start, and then one or two top. I mean, generally you do 2 coats of each, so I'll be here for the next 3 months getting through this. Anyway, it'll be worth it in the end. But that is not why I'm here. I am moving on a deck that I love very much, and it actually comes as quite a surprise. I did a video recently where I shared the fact that I went into a bit of shock because going through decks again, I'm continuing on my clearing out, and I'm not going to lie, this has been on the agenda for well over a year. I mean, these particular decks I'm referring to, I knew they had to go, and I've been pretty bloody lazy about moving them on. Not because I'm clinging on, it's just because I have so many other things to do. I just kept, oh yes, I'll sell them, blah, blah, blah. You know, that kind of push it under the carpet sort of thing. And that annoys me when I do that to myself. So this was a wonderful thing because within these shelves, there's a little cupboard in the center, and that is where I keep those decks that are going to move on. It's very easy to close the little door and forget. You know what I'm saying? So they're on the floor, which annoys me. And that's why I got that kick that I needed. This little pile of decks that I'm referring to, many of which I featured in a recent video where I was talking about the shock that I went into over the decks that I had to acknowledge needed to move on. And they were the decks that I would personally deem aesthetically pleasing, beautiful artwork. I really resonate with the artwork itself, but in my heart of hearts, I know this relationship is done. One that I mentioned, did I put it? Yes. One that I mentioned is the Wildwood. You know, the artwork is stunning, but I'm just not feeling that sense of, it's really weird because I was about to say, I'm not feeling that sense of nature. I am feeling closer to nature as a person and need to spend more and more time outside on the grass with the trees. Being in the ocean, that's nothing new for me. You've probably heard me say that 1,000 times. But I am feeling at the moment very, very connected to the bushland. So the trees, the forest, that kind of thing. Yet, you'd think I'd be grabbing this deck, right? Not happening. So the beautiful Wildwood is going. And in that very same video, I shared that the decks that I feel that I have a working relationship with are decks that surprised me. And I'm so grateful to have them. I feel the reason that is because I still learn something. It'll shock me from time to time. And one of the decks that I used as an example was the Voyager Tarot. So personally speaking, I wouldn't say, oh, that artwork is for me. I've never really been much of a, oh my goodness, the things that occurred over the last 2 minutes. I took a sip of coffee, trying to think of the simple word collage. Yes, I'm speaking of collage decks, and I'll get back to the storyline in a moment. But because my brain is what it is, I picked up my coffee to take a sip, and at the same time, because I'm thinking of what is it? The Muse is also a collage deck. And I kind of had one of those knee-jerk reactions. So I sort of jolted, and a flabeur of coffee went up into the air, and I'm looking down, and there's like 5 decks sitting in front of me, slow motion. No! And it fell on my ankle. Oh my goodness me. Now, I'm talking about a deck that I'm about to move on, which is sitting just there. So I've just had a mini turn, and I thought I'd better just sit down and take a sip, and I'll carry on. Dear God, maybe me, coffee and camera doesn't really work. As I was saying, just making sure everything's dry down here. Yes, it actually fell on me. Thank you. Yes, I ended up keeping as an example the Voyager Tarot, which I do love. I have to say, first of all, James Wanless, I hope I'm pronouncing your surname correctly. The work of James Wanless I really love. I have a couple of his books there. And the Voyager never ceases to give me that poke and that kick that I need. It takes me to a completely different mind space than, say, many of the other decks that I'm very familiar with would take me. So I think it's challenging. It's a challenging deck for me, and I feel like I always learn something when I use that deck. So that deck is not an everyday deck, and I don't want it to be. It certainly has a purpose, and that's why it's staying. Whereas the Wildwood is more about its beauty for me. But I'm not saying it doesn't give answers and all that kind of stuff. Of course, every deck does. If you know how to use tarot, they all work. But for me personally, it's not stretching me. It's not pushing me. And so it's going. So the video that I'm referring to, which I can place below, I was just sharing the fact that I was shocked. Like, my ego had a certain thing in mind. And I always say my soul. It's a figure of speech. But I feel like, that the truth within is saying, no, you're kidding yourself, dear. This is the way we're going. And I'm so grateful for that awareness. So when it comes to this deck, and I won't dangle the carrot any longer, I am referring to the beautiful Solara Occulto. Now, I thought I'd never get this deck. The first edition went out of print, and not only that, it is very expensive to have... postage between Canada and Australia, as most of you would know, it's very, very expensive. It just seems to, over the last 18 months, postage has gone up everywhere around the world, I think, and it's just getting silly. And of course, this is not a small box. So if it was just a smaller tuck box, maybe it'd be different. Anyway, I dreamed for such a long time. I yearned, I wished, I put my desires out there. Up on the vision board you go, hoping that I could buy a copy in Australia. And I'm not one to open Facebook every day, and I just don't want to be that kind of clingy with social media. So when I do check, of course, I'd see Solara Occulto sold on the Facebook buy, swap, sell. Dang it, again and again I missed out. Anyway, I just had to settle and resign myself to the fact that I may never get it. However, in my heart and mind at the time, I thought, this is my RWS system deck. This is it, because it is so beautiful. And it does, due to the characters, the style of the artwork, I feel like it does stretch me and it does take me into a different arena. But it still comes back to the Rider-Waite system, so it's very easy, user-friendly. But the artwork and the color palette really got to me. Now, I'm sure you know it. I'll just show you a couple. I've put it back in order because I'm going to be shipping this deck off this morning. So here's the Fool. It is just beautiful. And I remain in shock because I had no intention of letting this deck go. The plan was I was going to let a number of Rider-Waite decks go. I don't have clones. I mean, I have the Dirty Pan, which will always be my Rider-Waite Smith deck. And I have Centennial in a tin. So I thought, well, that's going to go. Morgan Greer in a tin can go. What else? There's a number of others, but, they follow the Rider-Waite system. Let's just put it that way. I mean, this deck is beautiful. And see, this is the thing. Warning to anyone that's on the fence. Once you get it out again and look at I love this Hierophant card. You look at the artwork and think, did I make a mistake? Anyway, my point is I kept putting this off for a very long time. I think it would be over a year. No, I don't think it would be. I know it is. Over 12 months. I have been oscillating between stay and go. Same thing. This is one of my dilemmas. I'm not picking this deck up. I'm not rushing into my little sacred space and picking this deck up. Why is that? And then as a test, I'm always testing myself. Okay, if you're not picking the deck up, I will make myself pick the deck up and use it. And then when I do, I think this is stunning. What the heck is wrong with me? It's absolutely beautiful. So then I think, well, I need to keep it because, it's beautiful and it reads so well. And I think the artwork is stunning and yeah. The list goes on and on. All the justification you need to keep the deck. And then months would go by and I go and pick up my old favorites. And I realize that I love this artwork so very much. I think it's very special. And now this is my friend, the Tower. I love this Tower card. But if it is not a working, oh my God, I just dropped them, which means now they're out of order. If it is not a working deck, I've just got to show you the sun and the moon and then I'll stop. Because clearly I can't do two things at once. Beautiful. It's a beautiful deck. Come on now. But I'm in a bit of shock. I'm not going to lie because I thought, well, this is it. I found my mate. My Rider-Waite based deck. I found it. This is it. So I've got, my little workhorse, good old dirty Pam. This will always be. I don't need a pile of decks that look identical to this one. The only thing that would take me to another straight RWS deck is if there's another color palette. I know there's a whole lot of people out there, recoloring these decks. If something else popped up that I fell in love with, I might swap this for the other one. But that's it. So yes, I remain in shock because I thought I had found my lifelong RWS system mate. And I find myself selling it on. So, as I was saying, it was over a year. And the reason it went on and on was because I suppose you could suggest it's like a heart against the head. It's almost like a Three of Swords moment, I think. Did I just see the Three of Swords in my other fave? So it's almost like the Three of Swords in that sense where I thought, yes, here it is. My illusions are shattered. For me, it's almost like my heart is here and my head has, being swords, being air, the mind steps in, the logic steps in to say, listen, you're going to have to face it. These are the facts. It's not what you thought it was. There's no doubt that the deck is absolutely beautiful. The artwork speaks for itself. But is it your lifelong mate? I don't think so. Otherwise, you would be picking it up in your sleep and you're not doing it. Obviously, there are other decks that are doing what you need at this time. And I'm always going to add that to the end of every sentence at this time because the changes I've been going through personally, well, some of you know, they've been pretty hefty. And of course, for all of us at the moment, we live in a very changeable world. So I think one has to be ready. Clinging, doing a Four of Pence in the shadow, clinging on is not going to serve any of us at this time. That's my philosophy at least. So as it happens, this deck here, which I've spoken about many times already, Bright Future Tarot, this became my mate. And I could say lifelong, but I won't make that mistake again. But I've showed this deck so many times, I won't do that to you again. But as a working deck, absolutely. I love the artwork. It's very modern and bright and colourful. And that's interesting because when I bought this deck, this was it. Like the neutral tones, earthy, natural, neutral, softer. That was exactly what I needed. And it did take me through that cycle of time. And now I'm sort of back to the bright. And so I decided this is an interesting thing too, I think. A couple of people did reach out on the Facebook group looking for Solara, and I thought, well, this is my opportunity. I can actually sell it to someone that's asking for it, and I know what it's like when you're here saying, I'd really like to get a copy. This deck is now out of print. So for some reason, I just thought, no, not yet. And I think it was because I was struggling over a selling price. I'm not into these overinflated prices for a tarot deck. You know, if it goes out of print and people are asking for exorbitant amount of money, I refuse to pay it. It's just my thing. Because I think there's always beautiful decks coming out, so I'm not going to pay hundreds of dollars for a deck. But at the time, I could not decide. I really was trying to be fair to myself as well as fair to the buyer, because I would appreciate if I'm buying a deck from someone else, I would really appreciate that respect. But I just couldn't pinpoint what, you know, where to come in. Anyway, it was so bizarre. Just yesterday, I said to my dear old mum, that's it. I've got to stop mucking around. I've come to a decision. This is the price I'm going to sell the deck, which basically works out much the same as what you would pay if the deck was available in Australian dollars. And so, in other words, this person is paying probably $10 more than the deck would actually cost without the ridiculous freight from Canada. I could ask for $30, $40 more, maybe $50 more. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. But I finally found myself being happy and content with my decision. I think that's what it was before. And this is what prompted me to do this video. I thought maybe it's because I am finally ready to let the deck go. I don't know why I was hanging on to it for all those months, other than to suggest indecision. But perhaps not being able to settle on a price was just a part of my excuse. I mean, logically, I can say to you, I really didn't know what to do. I was almost going to write to a couple of people on the Facebook group saying, what would you suggest is a fair price? That's how, you know, because I see, yeah, there's just such a, there's such a broad range of prices for out of print decks. And I guess it's just not really my thing. So I really wasn't sure what to do. But if you want to get down dirty and technical about it, that was probably a good excuse for me to hang on to it just that little bit longer. And anyway, yesterday I was saying to my mother, that's it. I'm putting all the decks on the floor and they are going to go, including the beautiful Solara. Later that day, would you believe someone put their hand up saying, I'm looking for Solara Occulto Tarot. We began to chat privately, and she's just such a beautiful person and loves her tarot decks. And she said, no one touches my decks. They're all for me. Like, it's just a very personal journey for me. I think from what I can gather, she uses it as a tool for her spiritual awakening, her life path. And so it's like a ritual for her. And I just thought, you know what? Maybe the whole point is I found the right home for my deck. So I offered it at a very reasonable price. And I feel so comfortable with that. I think that's, you know, there's one deck that I want at the moment that has been in my basket for, I reckon, 4 months. Like, I'm just such a careful, conscious purchaser. I always have been, even as a kid. I've never rushed into anything. But while these swirling changes continue, I just thought, you're not going to buy it until you're sure. And there was a little bit of uncertainty over a couple of cards with the artwork. I'd say 90% of the deck really appeals to me, but that small 10, probably even 5% didn't. Anyway, just going over the walkthroughs and images online, I did it again about a week ago, and I thought, wow, I really feel it's still with me. It's still in my heart. And that is the Lunar Soul. So there you have it. I thought I would share that because it's all part of the journey of life, and I feel it is actually attached to that video that I was sharing about the decks that I chose to keep. Actually took me by surprise in many instances, and the decks that are due to move on have done much the same. And I don't want to sound like I'm the sort of person that's, you know, finds it actually traumatic to let these things go. It's not that. It was just more of, I couldn't get a clear, like, I do want less. I'd love to be happy with just, I think 12 to 15 decks would be absolutely fantastic. If I feel that I get everything I need from that small selection, that would suit me down to the ground. I don't want to put a number on it. That's not my objective, but I'm just saying around that is what I had for many years. In fact, I was a one deck person for 10 years, then it went on to 2 decks, and just very slowly but surely it grew. And a lot of it came out of buying pre-loved decks, and I still have a real thing about that. I love buying decks from people who have had the deck, loved it, and just like myself, have really looked after it, but realize it was time to move it on. So that remains. But all that said, I just want to keep it down to, a very manageable number. However, I'm certainly not aiming to go down to 1 or 2 decks. I love change. I love options, but just keep it steady and realistic and manageable. So that's what that's all about. And so I felt prompted to share. Anyway, how are you going with yours? Are you detaching? Are you growing your collection? I mean, there's no right and wrong here. I want to make that very, very clear. If you're a collector, that's fantastic. Collect. Do what it is. As long as that works for you and you are able to accommodate the things that you are collecting. It may not be tarot. It may be something else. I was a collector of music. I was a collector of crystals. I get it. But I really am enjoying the process of minimizing and simplifying my life, because I just feel lighter inside. I feel clear in my mind when I have less. I'm not forcing myself into this. It's just an honest transition that commenced a few years ago now. And it's hitting me again with clothes, of which I have donated many. But I feel like there's going to end up being 6 inches between everything that hangs in my wardrobe, the way I'm going, because I just feel my mind saying, no, keep them because you wear them. But it's just this sense in my belly, you need less. You really need less. So I don't know whether I'm unconsciously preparing for a move. That's something I consider. And if you have less, it's much easier to organize a move. Right now, I know I can't move, but I just, it'll be interesting to see what unfolds over the next couple of years, I suppose. So the journey continues. I hope you are doing well with your journey, whatever it is. Feel free to share. But I'm a little excited. So I'll let you know how I go with all those decks that are going to move on. They're looking at me right now. I feel that Solara Occulto, that was the block. Once that moves on, I think it's going to be quite the domino effect. And the rest of these decks, all of which are mass-produced, a couple of them are out of print now. But honestly, I'm happy to sell them for a song. It doesn't matter. Just off you go. Enjoy your new space. Enjoy your new home. That's sort of where I'm at mentally with those other decks. So until next time, all the best. Take care and don't spill your coffee. See you soon.